Hello, Justin Patterson Schmidt. So, all these things about polls, were these the same polls that predicted Hillary Clinton winning? Were they the same polls that said Britain wouldn't exit the EU? Polls are baloney. I'm an engineer, software engineer, and I'm an engineer manager. Polls don't mean anything. Statistics don't mean anything. Statistics are numbers which people make up to fight for something. Doesn't really matter. Especially when you're, 400 people out of thousands and millions. That's not statistically significant, period. So, I want to thank, our founding fathers for being able to speak here today. They wrote this thing called the Constitution. For some of you, it's that pesky little thing that you want to throw away, stomp on, destroy. And then Rhode Island, in that whole time period, refused to ratify it. Why? Because it did not give sufficient protections for people. The Constitution in its entirety gives what government can do, how to set government up, what government can do, and what they can't do. But it didn't really give, and Rhode Island did not believe it gave sufficient protection to people. So they said, we're only going to ratify this if a Bill of Rights is created. So a Bill of Rights was created. And our founding fathers and our framers fought many, many hours, years, to create this Bill of Rights. And the one thing that they agreed upon, every single one of them, was every citizen of the United States has an unalienable right that shall not be infringed on firearms. They should keep and bear arms. They should have the right to form a militia. And even our state constitution, that other pesky little thing some of you want to throw away, that states even with everyone arguing the whole militia thing, even clearly states, just the people shall have the right to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. Well, everyone says, okay, so there's some limitations. Not really, no. There were machine guns available during our founders. Everyone would say, they talk about muskets. Muskets would put a bigger hole in you than an M16. That's a fact. It was a 75 caliber round ball. You get hit by that, you aren't coming back. Shotguns are far more destructive than your so-called scary guns. So, our founders believed that, everyone should have access to be able to keep and carry, that is the word, what bear means, arms. Mm-hmm. Did they say, only muskets? No. If they wanted restrictions, they would actually have put restrictions. They didn't. They had zero restrictions. There were machine guns available. There were rifles available above muskets. Rifles are far more accurate because they have, these little twisty things, for everybody that doesn't understand that, rifling. And so if they wanted to restrict it, they would have, but they didn't. Why? Because there's one single reason for the Second Amendment. It is not hunting. It's not even personal protection against, some robber. It's personal protection against government. Solely against government. The British tried to confiscate their firearms up in Lexington. They didn't really much like that. So they said, let's get together and keep them from confiscating our firearms and our ammunition and our ways to protect ourselves. But, they tried to do it, and then that is actually the first shot of the revolution. That is the reason we had a revolution. other things they were trying to work through the process with taxation and all those other things of the Intolerable Acts. So it is not accurate in any way, shape, or form to say, well, there are limitations we could put. Because they understood when you gave government, when the people gave government the ability to limit their, what they could have, when they can have it, how they can have it, they'll keep taking and taking. And then you become Nazi Germany. You become Stalin's Russia. You become Mao's China. Those three right there have killed more people than anyone else in history. So why would we keep giving government the ability to keep taking our rights away? You got to stand firm, fight for our rights. And it is to keep government in check and balance. In other words, we actually are the fourth branch of government. We keep government in check. The three branches of government you're supposed to keep each other in check. It doesn't always work that way. And as a last resort, it is the people that keep us in check, or that keep the government in check. So why keep, cutting our, what we can have? 10 rounds. Where'd you come up with that number? Why not 11 rounds? Oh, that's scary. That's too scary. So we got to go 10 rounds. What about 9 rounds? Oh, that's not as scary. Let's go 10 rounds. It's arbitrary. It's stupid statistics that people throw around. Doesn't mean anything. So the whole thing about our Constitution is what matters. It has nothing to do with, the whole bad guy, good guy thing. Everybody has the ability to do evil. Every single human being on the face of the planet. So why wouldn't you then want to have protection for yourself, your family, your countrymen? And if somebody does snap, then there's enough people in there to help and to reduce. Life is not guaranteed for safe. You get up in the morning, you're not guaranteed to come home at night. You can have a car accident, which kills more people than firearms. You can have, somebody could pick a fight with you. Fists kill more people than firearms. What are you going to do? Ban fists? Cut people's hands off? You want to, bring Hammurabi back? So, the three things, I call them the three laws that politicians should understand. The first law is the United States Constitution. No law should be made that is in conflict with the United States Constitution. Second law, no law should be made in conflict with the state constitution, for state legislature. And the third law, and that's only if it does not conflict with the first. The third is then and only then can the constituency be considered. And only then if it is not in conflict with the first and second. Your duty is not to your constituencies. It never has been and it never will be. Your duty is to the United States Constitution, to the Rhode Island Constitution. And then we have processes in place if we want to change those. The constitutions are not a living document. They are a working document. A working document in which there is a difficult process to follow, and it is supposed to be difficult. So government cannot take our rights away. And shall not be infringed is a very simple word, a very simple phrase. Shall, and if you guys, all politicians write this language. I worked for a defense company, so I know how to write requirement documents, and shall is an absolute. It shall not happen. So nothing shall be infringed. Thank you. Any questions?
Representative Knight, a question?
So I want to go back to the beginning of your commentary about polls.
And I understand that the sample size and the poll that we've all been talking about is rather small, so I have another poll to talk about. I represent a district of about 14,000 people, and in the last poll, and really the only poll that matters is what they tell me, the election, I won 5 and 6 to 1 in Barrington and by plurality in Warren. And I ran explicitly as a pro-gun control candidate. So there's a poll for you. Almost a huge majority of people in my district support common sense gun regulation. The school council of Barrington, the town council of Barrington, the town council of Warren, and the Bristol-Warren Regional School District all have passed resolutions supporting the concealed carry law on the table tonight for consideration to prevent concealed carry in schools. There are a huge chunk of the citizenry out there that wants this, that wants these laws. So we want to talk polls. There's a poll that matters. I totally get where you're coming from on the tyranny front and the Constitution front, but you have to understand, and I would argue that everything that's in the United States Constitution, it's not what you're reading it to be. It's all subject to reasonable regulation. The First Amendment is subject to time, place, and manner restrictions. You can't yell fire in a crowded movie house. The Fourth Amendment has so many exceptions to it that the amendment almost doesn't exist anymore against reasonable search and seizure. The Eighth Amendment has reasonable regulation. The 14th Amendment has reasonable regulation subject to it. We try to filter our laws that organize our life through the Constitution to make sure that we are following certain principles. But the Constitution, the text of it, is not inviolate. It's not statute. It's not law. It is guidelines. And I'm not saying it's a living document. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe that it's a working document. Our job is to represent our constituents and to try to make laws and revision laws so that we have ordered society where we are. And there's a huge chunk of people who do not like the scourge of gun violence in our community. They don't like dead kids in schools. They don't buy the good guy with the gun stuff. They don't buy the tyranny argument. That is a distinct minority of our population. I'm a veteran. I served for many years. I understand the tyranny argument. I really do. I get it. But it is not as absolute as you're making it out to be. And I would suggest to you that, coming back to my original point, for everything aside, our job is to represent our constituents and their wishes and to pass laws that we in good faith believe are constitutional and are the best that we can do for this community. And for me, speaking for me, because all I know is my district, my people want this.
So, like I said, your constituency is not the United States. The United States is the United States in the whole. And the poll, you said that your election was a poll. So was Donald Trump. So was that. So when you say that your constituency wants all this gun control, well, like I said, the state really ultimately, if you take the Second Amendment, the state actually has no authority in the world of firearms. That is the sole discretion of the federal government. And the federal government, by the way, the Second Amendment is written, shall not be infringed. So it's up to the government to ensure, the federal government to ensure that people's rights are not infringed. And if you think for 1 minute that, and like you said, the Fourth Amendment, it almost doesn't exist because the people keep letting government get away with this. And it is about time to stop.
I know we could go all night, and I don't want to, and I know you made an effort to come up here, and I certainly appreciate that. I just cannot let one thing pass. The 50 states and the District of Columbia and the territories have the right to regulate firearms as long as they do so within the confines of the Second Amendment as defined by the Supreme Court. It's not as simple as you make it out to be.
Define shall not be infringed.
It doesn't work that way. Because you know what? Out of all the laws we're talking tonight, we have a whole chapter that's dedicated to weapons, where we've People like to say we have the 8th strongest gun laws in the country. There's all kinds of gun laws on our books. Totally constitutional. Same thing in all the other 49 states and the District of Columbia and all the other territories. We can do that. It's okay. We're not infringing on the Second Amendment when we do that.
Just because it's law does not mean it has been constitutional. Just like you said, our Fourth Amendment almost doesn't exist anymore. Why? Because people keep thinking that they have the ability to legislate our Constitution away. And you said
actually, Justin, it's the court that's blown a bunch of holes through the Fourth Amendment,
and you
more
think
than legislation.
And that you think that that we have no ability to stop government from constantly legislating like that. Well, it's because we are constantly put in fear. And when you said that the Constitution is a guideline, are you kidding me? Our Constitution is called the supreme law of the land, the supreme law of the land. It is not a guideline. It is a law. It is a law that all other laws are supposed to be based on, not in conflict with it.
Representative Filippi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think a lot of our founders actually believed that the Constitution wasn't the supreme law of the land. They actually believed in the doctrine of natural rights. And when you look at the Second Amendment, it speaks of the right to bear arms as something that exists irrespective of the Constitution and actually exists in our humanity. And as people, we have what's called a natural God-given right to arm ourselves that the Constitution merely recognizes. You made a great point that reminded me of a word I hadn't heard in a long time, and that's democide. And democide is when people are killed by their own government. And I actually did some research, and 262 million people were killed by their own government in the 20th century. And that's what the Second Amendment is for. And as long as we have it, and the people have a right to defend themselves from tyranny, that will never happen here. And I'm thankful you stood up and reminded me of that.
And
Thank you.
I want to comment on the unalienable rights. When our Constitution was drafted, the Bill of Rights wasn't there, because our founding fathers believed that when they created the Constitution, that was the enumerated powers of government, and that is only what is supposed to happen. So with all of the things that government regulates and creates laws on, really were not supposed to happen. With everything happening under the Commerce Clause, these times, our founders never envisioned things to be used that way. And then when the Bill of Rights came in, then our unalienable rights started being mentioned, because states like Rhode Island and others believed that, and the Anti-Federalists believed that a lot of what was in the Constitution could be used against people to take away unalienable rights. And so that's why that was drafted. And so it's not in conflict with that supreme law concept. It is in concert with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.